The Phoenix Mercury are going to win game 3 of the WNBA Finals against the Las Vegas Aces.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Kalia Butler, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. We are so excited to have you tuning in with us. Joined alongside me is Sophia Jones, my fellow broadcaster within the WNBA. We have plenty to talk about, so many exciting things going on within the league specifically. We're going to go over a little bit more about the drama within the WNBA and how that is maybe causing problems in other spaces, just with the commissioner and Napheesa Collier and other players in the league not being able to agree why the Las Vegas Aces have been able to take the first two games within the WNBA Finals. But Sophia, me and you both believe that the Phoenix Mercury are going to win the third game going back to Arizona.
100%. I think Mercury are due for a win. Phoenix Arena has a really great environment, and it's just been interesting seeing the difference between the Phoenix Mercury between game 1 and game 2, because game 1 was so narrow. They kind of let that one slip away, but they had the keys to success and didn't necessarily replicate those same things in game 2.
Yeah, so we're going to look back a little bit. So Phoenix started their playoff journey on their home floor, right? They were going against New York Liberty, lost their first game, but were able to beat them in overtime. But then when they got back on track in the second game, they were able to have a win in Barclays Center, so that when they came back to Arizona, they were able to close out the series. And this was kind of the same timeline that went into playing the Lynx. It seems like once they just have one road win and they're able to go back home, and again, they don't have a road win right now, but I think if they're able to go back home at this moment, they have so much success playing at home. They remain one of the top teams in the league to have a fantastic win streak at home. I think if they're able to take these couple of games back in Phoenix, it's going to give them momentum, if they can, to go back to Vegas. And if they get a win there, they'll be able to take the entire series. And again, this is a best of 7, so they have some space and time to do so.
Exactly. And they are extremely capable of a team to get a little bit of that momentum back at home and to steal one in Las Vegas. But like I said, just the differences between game 1 and game 2, you just have to fall back to your roots and simplify everything and get back to what was working. One of the stats that kind of stood out to me when doing a little bit of a post-game deep dive was, we all know Alyssa Thomas. She's nicknamed the engine for a reason, but that engine wasn't chugging in game 2. So and just for example, in game 1, she initiated 18 pick and rolls compared to only 6 of them in game 2. So that's just a huge reflection right then and there of the differences and just not really doing what was working. And Vegas did make adjustments to that pick and roll action, but when again, Alyssa Thomas, there's a reason why her nickname is the engine. She does so much facilitating. Her players play so well off them. And especially back in a home environment for this next game Wednesday, role players often step up more. So those shooters that might have been missing a little bit more shots in Las Vegas, hopefully those will start to hit more. And a lot of those passes are going to have to come from AT.
Yeah, and that's something we really spoke about in our last episode, was the lack of facilitating that we saw from AT specifically. And I think, as you mentioned, because she is that engine, everybody else on the team just wasn't able to have energy of their own, because when AT is going, she feeds that energy off to everyone else around her, the role players, those coming off the bench, Kalia Copper, they're all kind of feeding off of AT. And even just to the point, Kalia Copper has been able to come out really hot in the first half in these last 2 games. And I think AT is one of those players that helps her stay in that rhythm. And when they're coming out of halftime and they're dropping off even more significantly than they did in the first, because each of the first 2 games, they have been able to come out really hot, specifically in the first quarter. They are setting the tone very early on. They're outscoring the Aces. However, you can see that by each quarter, it kind of starts to dip off. They'll come back a little bit in the fourth, but that push is coming a little bit too late. And to AT's point, in that game 2, she only shot the ball 9 times, making 5 of them. That's why she had a total of 10, which is well below her average 15 points per game that she was averaging in the regular season. And again, we've brought this up. She was leading the WNBA in assists all season long. That was her thing. that was her. Aside from getting triple doubles and all this other stuff, she was also the main facilitator in the league. So then when she only also had like 6 rebounds and 5 assists, which are still below her standard of 8 rebounds and 9 assists per game, you can just tell it wasn't the Mercury's night. However, to your point, Sophia, when you go back to play at home, especially in a finals environment like this, and I know the Mercury fans have just been itching for them to get back home so they can give them that little morale boost. I think we're going to see a completely different Phoenix team.
Yeah, and one of the things that we were talking about last episode as well was just that the Phoenix Mercury didn't totally seem 100% locked in
Mhm.
game 2. That's another thing that changes when you're in a home environment. Players become more locked in, a little bit more focus and attention to the game plan. I think especially defensively, they got to figure out some things because this is a more so defensive minded than offensive minded team, and they need to be able to generate a lot of their looks from that end of the floor.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you mentioned defense too, because even head coach Nate Tibbetts in their post-game presser, he said we're here because of our defense, and to give up 89 points in game 1 and then 91 in game 2. We know that Vegas is obviously a very good offensive team. They have great players, but we have to be better on the defensive end. And thinking about these finals games too, a lot of this has been defense against defense. Vegas's defense has been great. The Mercury have been able to make it this far because of their defense. So it's uncharacteristic for them to give up almost 90 points so far within the first 2 games. And a lot of that just goes into them being locked in. I think we saw in game 2, there was a lot of misreads. There was backdoor cuts that just weren't even being addressed. It just seemed as though they weren't just fully mentally there, and hopefully this home crowd can give them that environment of, hey, we need to perform in front of our home crowd because they are who helped us get this far anyway.
Exactly. And then one player that I would want to highlight on that defensive end that I think could potentially not only see more minutes but make an impact would be Natasha Mack. She's a really great rim protector. She can block anyone in the league's shot. In game 1, she was +8 in 16 minutes, and then in game 2, she was +4 in 19 minutes. And out of both those games, she was the only main rotation player that was in the positives, in the plus minus. So she's a starter. She kind of gets taken out a little bit just for some of the bench players like a Dewana Bonner who can stretch out the floor a little bit more. But with the lack of defense that is so pervasive in this series right now for the Phoenix Mercury, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more minutes for Mac.
Yeah, and when we're just thinking about the Mercury for this final game, we're definitely going to look for some more defensive intensity, facilitating a little bit more bench production, and also just making a point that Satu Sabali, after Her injury, it looked like to be a severe injury somewhat in that game too, to her ankle. She said she's fine afterwards. So ideally, we will be able to see her in this third game playing at home because we know what a big factor she plays for the Mercury. But coming up, we're going to talk about why the Aces have been able to have so much success in these first two games. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during game. When we're looking at this third game for the finals right now, the Phoenix Mercury are in a 3.5-point favorite to win game 3. So just like everybody else, people believe that, just like us, people believe that the Mercury can and will win this third game back at home. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, so we've talked about Phoenix. We know that they are going to be able to come back from this 0-2 deficit and win the third game at home. However, we have to talk about how strong Vegas has been in these first two games. Coming away with the first two, Becky Hammon in the post game after last game, she said we did a better job of being more sturdy up front in their defense, which was a big focus that they wanted. Again, in that first game, we were able to see the zone throw the Mercury off. But in the second game, they relied a lot more to their man-to-man defense. And that seemed to throw the Mercury off even more than that zone defense that we were seeing. And the other thing that she mentioned was that their guard-to-guard actions were just a lot more solid than they've seen beforehand. Sophia, in your perspective, what do you think went well for Vegas?
A lot of like what Coach Hammond said, I think when she talks about their front line being sturdy or the guards up front being sturdy, and I referenced that inverted pick and roll where Alyssa Thomas is the ball handler and then a guard is setting the screen. And normally what AT does is it just causes a lot of confusion and either she gets to switch on the guard and just takes them and bullies them to the basket, or it's then a late recovery by the primary defender and she's able to facilitate, force help, all that fun stuff that we've seen AT do in the past. But what I saw a lot of was those guards that were in the defender position of that screening action. Specifically, I thought Dana Evans did a great job. She just goes in and braces herself for that contact so that Alyssa Thomas is just stopped and can't get to the basket. And that's just really owning their ground. When Becky Hammon talks about sturdy, that is exactly what I saw. And then just the guard to guard screening and switching. Vegas is a switch heavy team, which really helps to keep teams out on the perimeter because you can't attack downhill. And when all of that is just so cohesive, the defense is moving on a string. That's why we saw the lack of offensive production by the Phoenix Mercury.
Yeah, we saw a lot of it from the defensive side for the guards for the Aces. But even as you mentioned a little bit on the offensive end, they were able to facilitate for each other a lot more than I think we have seen beforehand. Obviously, we love those paint touches. We love getting to Asia Wilson, but Vegas has very good guards on this team. And I think we've been able to see that, especially through the last two, where you see a Dana Evans step up. You see a Jackie Young, who's obviously been consistent, but having a really breakthrough game for the finals in that last one, having the most points scored in a quarter by any finals player within the WNBA in general, throughout all the championship games. So just her to step up, and even we've seen Jewel Lloyd in that first game too, and even in the second game she didn't have the same production that we saw in the first one, but she hit some big time shots when necessary. She had a couple of threes that just kept Vegas within their momentum, and I mentioned it last game when she hit a 3 in their second quarter after going on a 5-minute scoring drought. the game was over after that. I think that just really fueled them. And I think something important that Jewel has brought up too is just they understand how the leadership works on this team. Obviously, A'ja Wilson is their key leader, but you have so many veterans that are on this roster that something interesting, even with the Sky this season, that Rachel Banham had brought up. When you have so many veterans on a team, you understand how to distribute that leadership. It's not all to one person to be like, oh, well, Aisha's the best person on our team, so she has to lead us the whole way. When you have multiple players within a roster that have been playing in this league for years on end and being able to make it this far, and some of them, have seen championships, have been part of them, it's really helpful when you get late into the season like this and you don't feel like it's only one person that has to take control of everything.
100%. And I would even take it a step further where they have a really solid group of veterans that has also experienced very high levels of winning. So that core between just Asia, Jackie, and Chelsea, they all won with the Las Vegas Aces prior. They won with USA Basketball. So
Mhm.
they've won in the domestic WNBA stage and on a global stage. And bring that up because in comparison to some of the veterans for the Phoenix Mercury, where you kind of are more so led by an Alyssa Thomas or a Kalia Copper, even Dewana Bonner, they haven't or Kalia Copper, she was former finals MVP with the Chicago Sky, but it's not as evenly dispersed as the Las Vegas Aces. And then just when we talk about being bought in and seeing that total diffusion of effort, I think that's what really shines through for the Las Vegas Aces. And it makes it so hard to go up against because you really don't know where that offensive or defensive proficiency is going to come from. Game one, it felt like it was the bench between Dana and Jewel. And then this most recent game, it was Asia and Jackie. So who knows in game three, but just having that total, just that even spread is really, really valuable for this team.
Yeah, and even adding from my point, adding to your point, adding back on again, when you look at Jewel Lloyd, who also won 2 championships with the Seattle Storm, Dana Evans, that was part of the championship team with Candace Parker, with the Chicago Sky, bringing the Sky their first ever WNBA championship. The entire from your starting lineup to some of your key bench players, they've all won a championship and they know what it takes to get there and what it takes to get the job done. Having that level of experience, no matter how long you've been in the league, having experience of being in games like this is so vital. And they understand how to respond to the Mercury. And I think what you just mentioned, Alyssa Thomas hasn't been able to see success in the finals for herself just yet. And, there's a big push for her because obviously other players want to not win only for themselves, but they want to win for her. She wants to win for herself. She wants to win for her team and the organization. But it is a little bit of more, she is the main person that you rely on besides, obviously a Kalia Copper who played such a vital role. No, now that I think of it, everything goes back to the Chicago Sky in some way. Kalia Copper was with the Sky. Dana Evans.
Who would have thought?
Thunk, and it's just really devastating. Anyway, but the Vegas, to your point, so many key players. The guards are all connecting at this point. A'ja Wilson is continuing to break some sort of WNBA record every single game so far. But also, who we talked about a lot last podcast as well was Chelsea Gray and just her ability to facilitate. When we're talking about the Phoenix needing to facilitate, the Vegas is doing very well at facilitating, and a lot of that charge is because of Chelsea Gray.
100%. And I've always been such a big fan of Chelsea Gray, even when you look at her success with not only the Aces, but also the Sparks in that same Candace Parker team that saw so much success in the 2010s, since we're relating a lot to Chicago Sky today. No, just she's been there before and she's just such a calming presence, I
Yeah.
think, where she has a lot of fire to her and you see that on the court. You do see that emotion come out, but whenever there's needed any type of stability, she provides that. And I think that's where you find that calmness and just that facilitation and her mindset that helps to really diffuse. I mean, when you have a coach like Becky Hammon who has a player like Chelsea Gray on the floor, your point guard, you always want your point guard to just be an extension of the coach. And I think that's exactly what Chelsea Gray provides.
Yes, the point guard herself. We love Chelsea Gray. Very interested to see what this game tomorrow brings. I think it's going to be really exciting. Again, the Mercury, they're back at home. They're going to have all the momentum to win this one. But coming up next, we're going to talk about Cathy Engelbert a little bit more, and why Napheesa Collier canceled their meeting that was supposed to be scheduled before the end of month CBA agreement.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving a lot of money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does all the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. If you're like me, you don't really know all too much about finances. Spreadsheets kind of intimidate you, but colors and graphs is exactly my jam and exactly what Monarch Money does for you. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code in all caps locked on NBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code locked on NBA.
All right. So now that we've talked about the finals, we have to talk a little bit about this meeting that Napheesa Collier and Cathy Engelbert, the commissioner, were supposed to have. Napheesa Collier ended up canceling the meeting and saying that the relationship is beyond repair. Why did Napheesa cancel the meeting? So after Napheesa Collier had made her statements and Cathy Engelbert had responded to some of those, she said that I've been in contact with Napheesa Collier and we are going to essentially talk some things out. However, Cathy Engelbert then later denied the comments that she had made about Caitlin Clark, saying that Caitlin should be lucky that she makes $16 million outside of the WNBA because the WNBA is the one that provides their platform. And that was not something Napheesa wanted to hear. She did not like that at all, because we all know Napheesa Collier came with receipts, and what Napheesa said was probably said. So the fact that the commissioner is now denying that, again, she has said that the relationship is beyond repair. And Sophia, we were talking about this a little bit, the difference between the lack of transparency and the lack of trust. Both of those words and terms have been thrown around a lot within these conversations. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think that this is just this moment is more especially between Fee and Cathy is something that has been building up for a while. So I think people shouldn't be surprised when Napheesa just comes out and says she feels like there is a lack of transparency and a lack of trust in the current collective bargaining agreement negotiations, which expire October 31st, which is why there's a lot of tension right now. One of the things that they're trying to, of course, establish is a higher percentage of revenue. And there was an article written recently by Kendra Andrews and Ramona Shelburne that basically said that the league has it right now where even if the league experiences revenue growth, the percentage that the players get is fixed. And it's fixed because they haven't reached a certain amount of revenue. And the players have asked for records of those revenue shares essentially. that the league hasn't provided. So that's something that the players, again, that's a lot of where we can see some of this lack of trust. And then again, that word transparency derived from.
The tensions are so high right now because we are approaching the end of the month, and this is when all the CBA negotiations are supposed to be finalized. I think, though, it comes at a difficult time because it was the right time for Napheesa to make these comments, absolutely, because it is the month that all of these negotiations are supposed to be finalized. However, it seems as though the drama within this, and not coming from necessarily the players, but the drama between Cathy Engelbert not necessarily taking a stance on what she did or didn't say, and trying to really heal some of these relationships with the players. It seems as though some of that is overshadowing what is going on in the league right now, which is upsetting to a degree because you have two finals teams that obviously the Aces have been able to consistently be at, but the Mercury being able to make a push this season and get all the way to the finals. I believe some of that is being overshadowed by the disagreements between Cathy Engelbert and the rest of the WNBA players. We were supposed to see the postseason awards right now. October 1st was supposed to be first team. Today was supposed to be the second team announcements. And we haven't seen either of those, or have we gotten any written statements or anything as to why any of that has been delayed.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the WNBA quite literally released a schedule with specific dates being, okay, on this date, we are going to release first and second team all defense. And then it was supposed to be today. We were supposed to be getting first and second team all WNBA, but there have been no words of that, which to a certain extent, I mean, when all of this is going on and so muddled, you do want these players to have their own spotlights, and it is important to have these conversations. But it's everything is getting so muddled right now. And Napheesa, she started off that press conference, of course, that blew up social media with, you know, credit to the Phoenix Mercury. So I think she was trying in that way, she was trying to keep it basketball, let these players have their credit where credit is due. But it's just these conversations are so important to have. And there's a deadline. I don't think anyone wants a lockout. None of the players, none of the WNBA front office, and certainly none of the fans.
They've made it clear that they don't want a lockout either. Obviously, the WNBA is in such a great position to continue its growth. We've seen this entire season this has been record breaking numbers for the amount of viewership that the WNBA has had. Which is absolutely wonderful to see. This is what everybody wants to see. When we're talking about the growth of women's basketball, this is exactly what people are talking about. And it is so important that Napheesa is bringing up these conversations and allowing the public to know about it, because she did say at first, these were conversations that were all happening behind closed doors. But when you don't feel like you are getting the proper support, it is time to be like, you know what? I need other people to hear what I have heard and the conversations that I have tried to have that just have gone south. So again, I do agree with what Napheesa has done, and obviously her just being at the forefront and being the voice for essentially some of the voiceless for some of these players, knowing just, she has that star power. She's won a championship. She's part of Unrivaled. Like, she literally created it. She understands what it takes for the growth. It's just a little unfortunate that the WNBA is not still giving the flowers to the other players at the moment that did earn that first and second team all defensive, all WNBA, because those are the players that we tuned in to watch this season. And so if they're not getting their flowers and you sent out a schedule saying exactly when those dates were supposed to happen, it is a little unfortunate.
Yeah, I'm a very much type A person. So if there's a schedule and we don't stick to that schedule, it kind of like I don't really care for that personally, which I'm sure is a case for a lot of other people. But yeah, it's just everything is getting so muddled right now. And hopefully before the end of the season, even if the tension between the WNBA Players Association and the WNBA Commissioner's Office settle down a little bit, if the finals, it really, once we start getting down to line, if there is 6, 7 games where those are must wins, and that's taking all center stage, that we can see some of these awards, because I know there are a couple people that I would love to see on there.
Sophia, I'm so immature because I have a 12-year-old brother, and you said 6'7", and like my immediate reaction was to laugh because I was like 6'7". Anyway, that's gonna wrap it up for us today. But we will be back tomorrow to discuss Game 3 of the WNBA Finals. Mercury versus Vegas Aces. They're going to be back in Arizona. It's going to be an exciting one. So make sure that you watch us tomorrow. Make sure to follow us on our social media handles. And again, thank you so much for watching Locked On Women's Basketball.